Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to give thanks to God and true parents. And also I'd like to give thanks to those who have come from a long way across the seas, to the two children who have come to two children. I'd like to give thanks because they have come such a long way. Please give them a round of applause. My older sister, Yejin-nim, his family is here. Please recognize them. And my sister, Hyung Jin-nim, my younger sister, Cheon Jin and Hyung Jin-nim, are here. Please applaud for my two younger sisters. And Sun Jin-nim's family is here. And also Kwon Jin-nim's family is here. Right now, in the hospital, surrounding True Mother, there is Kuk Jin-nim's couple, and the daughters-in-law are there. They are staying with True Mother during this time. All across the world, I'd like to give thanks to all of our brothers and sisters across the world. Many, many brothers and sisters from many countries and from all countries have, no matter whether it's Brazil or Russia or any other country, they are offering cheongsong and prayers, an incredible amount of prayers for the sake of true parents. And so today's my words are not just addressed to the Cheonbokgung, but to all members around the world. And so let's give a round of applause to all the members around the world. We need to remember, Father is not just a normal person. Father's body is not just a normal body. About 10 years ago, in America, Father went through a very difficult situation with his health. I think many members already know about this, but at that time, Father had to have a heart surgery because water kept coming into water kept flowing in, and so about 10 years ago he had to have an operation. But on the day that he went into the hospital, the Iraq War began. My older brother is telling me to take deep breaths. True parents of mind and body are always connected to the providence. If we look at the world today, there are many dangerous situations. In 2005, Father predicted that He predicted the Pan-Pacific Age, and he said that particularly the island nations are in danger. He said that Russia and China may use their overwhelming strength to take over the island countries, that kind of a time may come, he said. Already 7 years ago, he predicted this. And now we are witnessing that reality. The Senkaku Island, we see that Chinese citizens landed there, and the Japanese police took them into custody. And that we see that is a situation where there is a great possibility for conflict. You have seen the statistics that Kuk Jinim gives in his lecture on Strong Korea. Even now, Korea and Japan are having a conflict because of various content, for there's a Tokdo issue or other issues. And actually, these countries, these free countries, need to unite as one so as to stand up against the countries of communist dictatorships. And they need to defend themselves against this challenge. And this is a very important period in that sense. But instead, we are fighting over a small island, and that is what the world is witnessing. But then in the United States, and now is so weak economically now, and so it is just standing by quietly. In the Divine Principle words, we see in the part 2, where there's the prophecy about the Third World War. And depending on the human portion of responsibility, that war may be an actual war, or it may be a conflict of ideologies. But the Divine Principle, though, says that the Third World War must come, one way or another. So in this incredibly important time, our Father, who is responsible to save the world, pushed himself way beyond his limits. He went back and forth between Korea and the United States. And as soon as he would arrive, he would have assemblies, and he would speak for 3 hours, 4 hours, and he would have hundoke for 13 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours, 17 hours. I've been attending True Parents for the past year and a half, and that is how it has been continuously. In the heavenly calendar, or in the, I'll talk on the solar calendar, because it may be confusing, so I'll talk on the solar calendar. On July 16th, Father returned from Las Vegas to Korea, and as soon as he arrived in Korea, actually when he was still in the plane, he contacted Korea and told all members to gather in the Cheongsim World Center. I'm sure you remember, and you all attended there. And then at that event, he sweated as he spoke for 3 hours or 4 hours. And he gave us words. And then the next morning he spoke then at Hundoke. the workshop for the original Divine Principle was going on at that time, so he received the participants in that workshop. And then from that time, things became a little bit strange with him. His health seemed to be a little bit strange. As I was attending Father for a year and a half, when Father would catch cold, or when he would have a slight fever, or when he would be feeling bad, and I saw him recover many, many times, tens of times, when it was difficult, and then he would take a rest, and then after that, and the next day, he would come up again, and come to Hundokhae again, and would be very active and animated. I saw that many times. But this time, Father continued to cough, especially he was coughing a lot. We did not think that it was such a serious thing. Who could have predicted it that it would become like this? He was just coughing a little bit. But he continued to push himself. 10 hours, Hundokhae, meeting the IWs for 13 hours, and then Komundo Island too. He would push himself beyond his limits again. And continuously, even he was so active that it was difficult for a young person to keep up with him. And as he went on like that, the cough became more serious, and gradually the people around him started to become concerned. On August 2nd of the solar calendar, he visited the Osan school. Do you know about the Osan school? In our history, this is a middle and high school that is mentioned in our history. He suddenly he said he had to come to Seoul and visit the Osan school. And the Osan is a school is located near Hannam-dong. And that was a vacation. That was an off day. It was a weekend, and so there was no staff there or teachers there. But he just sat there in the lobby there and called all the leaders of our church, and he said, told us to speak about the history of the Osan school, and he had the leaders of our church report on that. At that day, the cough was very serious. When he would start speaking, every time he started speaking, he would start to cough. And he couldn't begin speaking without also beginning to cough. And people were saying, "Mother, I think that the cough is becoming very serious." People were very concerned on that day. And then continuously, Father went to the Gung, and he continued to cough. And Mother said that this is too serious. Let's go to the hospital. I said to Father, she said to Father, let's go to the hospital. But you know about him, you know how his personality is, what an incredible personality he has. He doesn't listen to anyone. And Mother would say, continuously was saying, "Please, please, Father, let's go to the hospital. You need to go to the hospital." But in any case, on August 3rd, without anyone knowing, Father was admitted to the Holy Mother Hospital in Seoul. And no one knew about this. Just the people who immediately attend Father were the only ones who knew this, and their hope was that he would recover his cough, be cured of his cough very quickly. And then But anyway, he was admitted to the hospital on that day. And the doctor did a number of tests. What was found on one part of the body was that the father's lungs are different from a normal person's lungs. The coal miners' lungs. Coal miners' lungs. And so the doctor said, how is it that so many particles have entered into his lungs? And the explanation was, when Father was in Hungnam prison, he breathed in the ammonia and he was moving the materials there. So then, when we told him about the Hungnam prison experience, the doctor said, yes, that's possible that he was affected by that. But as you know, the lungs' function is to provide oxygen to our bodies. And if there's a lot of particles there, then in the lungs, then what do you think? Do you think the oxygen can go into the body easily, or would it be difficult for the oxygen to get into the body? It would be more difficult than a normal person for the oxygen to be absorbed within it. And so in that situation, in a weakened lungs function, there was a pneumonia, and made it difficult for Father. When he first was admitted, he would 3 or 4 times a day, he would breathe through a oxygen mask. The nurses would apply the mask to him so that he could breathe in a better oxygen. And of course, he was taking medicine as well, and he was on IV at that time. He was also being given nutrients and medicine through the IVs. And at that time, when he was in the hospital, this was when the Olympics were going on, and we watched Father, and we saw him watching the Olympics, and we thought, well, that we felt he seemed a bit weaker than usual. That when he would take our hands and when he would walk, it was more difficult for him. It was difficult for him to walk at that point. And in any case, he was there for 10 days, and you know how urgent he is. And you know, all of our members know about Father. His character is he was always very urgent. He wants to go someplace, and he gets angry if he wants to go someplace and he can't. In any case, he says, it's like being in a prison here. He says, I feel like I'm in a prison. He was scolding people around him. He says, I feel like I'm in a prison. He needed to stay there until he was completely cured. But his character is just so incredible. Even the doctor, even the doctor finally approved, and after 10 days, Father returned to the Cheon. He went to the Cheon after being in the hospital for 10 days. And he promised mother that he would rest as he was going. That he made that promise, and that was he promised mother that he would not go back and forth. And mother made sure that he promised that before she took him to the Cheon. And I remember that day. But as soon as he got into the car, he was still had his IVs in his. He was still connected to his IVs in the car. But as soon as he got into the car, he says, "Where's the helicopter? I want to go to Commando." And so, right the moment that he boarded the car, and so we said, "No, Father, you can't go and take the helicopter now. You need to rest," we said to him. But so he returned to the Cheon, and on August 12th, he returned, and he rested for a while. Then at 10 p.m. that evening, he started coughing, and he got out of bed. He got up, and he received a lot of revelations at that point. And he did a special ceremony at that point. And he did a ceremony covering a north, south, east, and west. And it gave a lot of words. He should not be. It was important that he not speak, because his lung function was very weakened, and so he needed to stop talking. But he kept speaking, and he kept speaking through the night. And then he rested a little while longer again. And then in the morning, he got up in the morning. And it was difficult for him to walk normally, so he was in the wheelchair, and he was still connected to the IVs. He said, "Go that way, go over there." And he said, "Go over there." And anyway, the people who were attending him, together with a true mother, took him to all the corners of the Cheon, to east, west, south, and north. He went outside the Cheon, and he went all over the major points of the Cheon. And not only a person who's 93, but also very weakened, in a very weakened state. For hours and hours, he did this. He pushed himself way far beyond his limits, as he feels the urgent responsibility to save the world. And he pushed himself way beyond his limits. That day, I remember, even when he was lying down, he was not comfortable, because it became more and more difficult for him to breathe as he was lying down. So he could not lie down normally. He had to sit, because when he would lie down, it would put pressure on his lungs, and so he would prefer to sit to breathe that way. But it was very uncomfortable for him. We could see that he was uncomfortable. That night, Father could not sleep, and he continued to, every 30 minutes, every hour, he would get up and try to change the way he was lying down. And Mother would see that, and said, "Father, I don't think your body is very healthy." And then the next day, in any case, we did our best, and Mother convinced him to go to the Cheongsim Hospital very quickly. Very suddenly, he went to the Cheongsim Hospital. Our room is next to the Shinjun's room, but he went out even before we could join him. He went out very quickly to the Cheongsim Hospital. At that time, it was an oxygen tank. He was there, and he needed to breathe through the oxygen mask. And as when we got there, the hospital, the nurses and doctors were doing their best to help him. But it became. We felt it was becoming more and more difficult. The doctors felt this. It was becoming more and more difficult for them to care for him. And so that day, when Kukjinim was returned from the United States, and so we had a meeting at the Cheongsim, and he was giving him oxygen saturation. So to check, this is a test to see whether oxygen is enough oxygen is getting into the blood, and the doctors confirmed that the body was not absorbing oxygen as much as it should. And many people felt that father would be comfortable at Cheongsim, but the mother said, no, we need to go to the Holy Mother Hospital, and they have an intensive care unit, so he needs to go there, she said. So if this gets any worse, then we need to move him to Seoul. And mother made that decision. And in that situation, father was very weakened, and he was at that time he was eating rice gruel, the gruel, a very soft rice soup, but because his lung function was weak and he could not breathe normally, and in order to doctors were trying to feed him the rice gruel in order to give him more energy. But on the way to Seoul, the gruel that he had eaten went down went to the wrong pipe, and it went into the trachea, because he had a pneumonia, and also because something went into his body quickly. And so this was a very dangerous situation. And as soon as he arrived at the intensive care unit, they immediately they gave him artificial respiration with their hands. And then mother said, okay, you should all go to Hannam-dong because the father was going to be here. But as soon as we arrived at Hannam-dong, we got a call saying, quickly, come back. So we returned to the hospital very quickly from Hannam-dong. And when we arrived in the ICU, and mother was waiting, and we waited for about an hour there. Then the doctor said, if mother had made that decision to come to Seoul even a half hour later, then father would have gone to spirit world that day, if that decision to come to Seoul had been made even a half hour later. That is how serious it was. But heaven protected him, and just at the right time, it was a move to Seoul, and we had a small opportunity then to stabilize father's situation. The oxygen was not being absorbed as it should, and so there was an oxygen tank was placed next to his bed, and he was given an oxygen mask, but even that was not enough, because he had less than 80% saturation of oxygen in his blood. In other words, more than 20% of the body of oxygen the body was not able to absorb. And so it was a very dangerous situation. And the oxygen mask was not enough, and so they had to go to the next stage. The next stage was, that is to pump father's lungs with a machine. And so as to move the lungs as much as to their maximum extent. This is an artificial respirator. And so Father used that artificial respirator, and so that the oxygen saturation beginning to could rise to a stable level. And so we were very encouraged. We were very encouraged by that. We were a little bit more encouraged. And as you know, I'm sure, our older Changnos and Kwonsanims, I'm sure that you've experienced something like this when you go to the hospital, when you are connected to a respirator, then you know that a tube is placed into something is put in there to keep the mouth from closing. And so that is what Father needed from the first day. He had a tube in his mouth, and he could not speak because he needed to recover. And of course, he was receiving medicine by IV. And the doctors, so we feel a gagging instinct when something goes down, right? So when you have a tube in there, think how uncomfortable it is. And so it's difficult for old people to endure this, and they're connected to a machine, and the breathing is not natural because the machine is forcing the breathing, and so it is very the throat is very painful. And so from the first day, Father was allowed to sleep, so that he was given a medicine that would put him to sleep so that he would not feel the pain. And I had seen how Father overcame all difficulties, whether it's a cold or anything else, any difficulties in our church. And so I felt that he would probably get out of bed in 2 days and probably have say, all right, everyone gather together and have a hundoke. This is what I thought, what I expected. But suddenly, and people who are old, I could see that their health can deteriorate very quickly and very suddenly. And as he went to the second stage, and as he was breathing through the respirator, through the machine, the doctor called True Mother and called us to the conference room and said to us, in the next day or two, he's now been on the machine for a day or two, and so now the pneumonia bacteria is now in the bloodstream, and it went into the kidneys. The bacteria have gotten into the kidneys, and now he said that the kidneys are not able to function normally. Father is not able to create urine. And then, so in that situation, the blood becomes oxidized. The blood itself becomes it becomes acidic. I'm sorry. The blood itself becomes acidic, and itself becomes a poison. And so we needed to have a dialysis. It needed to be put on a dialysis machine. I'm sure you know that when we do dialysis, when people do dialysis, a large tube has to be placed into the body, and this is an operation by which it is placed in the body, and then take out the urine so that other organs can recover. So the approval was given for that, and the signature was given, and it told the doctor to quickly do that. And then, after doing that, I went down to see Father after that, and now Father had a tube in his throat, and he had his IVs in his body for nutrients and for protein, and he could not eat, and so he was being given proteins through the IV and fluid as well. And then to cut into his body again to place the dialysis tubes. So Father, when we saw Father, we were very concerned. Even for an older person, even one dialysis operation is difficult. But then right away, the next day, now the machine was had to force Father to breathe so that the oxygen would get into his body. But the doctor was then told us, now right now the machine is being put on the maximum force. And yet, even though the machine is working at the maximum force, still, Father's oxygen saturation rate was still falling. And so now he said that there's only the final stage remaining. He said there's modern medicine only allows for one more stage, and that would be that to go into a artery in the leg, and to take blood from there, and then to put oxygen into the blood, and then put the blood back into the body after it has been saturated with blood outside the body. And so, Father, there need to be tubes placed in two arteries to take the blood out of the body, to then saturate it with oxygen outside the body, and then put the blood back into the body. And so there were more and more machines being placed around Father. And he could not move. He could not move. He could not. Sometimes the patient tries to take out the tubes, and so he was placed in a deep sleep, and also the body was made so that it would not move. And now these situation kept getting worse like this, and so. And he was deteriorating very quickly, and it was very shocking to us. It was shocking to us to see how quickly he was deteriorating. In any case, in that situation, now all members around the world are offering Cheongsong and sweating sweat and prayers, offering prayers and offering Cheongsong for Father's quick recovery. What I'm very grateful for is that in this situation now, and Father is the Father of all members around the world. And so we know that everyone is concerned. But Mother made a very wise decision to put out official statements so that everyone could offer Cheong-song, and that Father is in the ICU, and that let's all pray and let's all offer Cheong-song. This was the content of the first statement. And truly, Father, even when that memo was going out, already the true children were coming from around the world. The true children were coming to Korea from around the world. And she met them, and of course she was sleeping, but she would take them by the hand, and she would also massage Father's feet, and she would say to Father, "Father, I love you. Father, I love you. Please be strong. Please get up and slap me on the cheek," she said. "Please get up, fighting. Please get up and please rise up." And every day, Mother would go down to the ICU, and she went so often that the doctor said, "I said, now you need to let him alone. Because if Father becomes too excited, then for a person of that age in that situation to become excited, it would be more difficult. If his heart rate rises or blood, so the Mother's visits were reduced to twice a day by the doctor's order. But what I'm very grateful for is that the members acted very quickly to offer Cheong-song, and gave the Champumuni Mongmanse visits, and we received many tweets and emails from members around the world. Of course, he's still in a very dangerous situation. He's still in the ICU. He needs to remain there for the next week. The next week is very important, and is really very important. He needs to be there for at least a week. Some people say, "Oh, he got up and ate some gruel," but they don't know what's going on. Father needs to remain in his sleep, and he has the tubes in his arteries, and really, he has so many tubes in him that you cannot put any more into him, and he's in that situation. And 2 days ago, Father was able to have a bowel movement. And then now he's lying down, and so his bowels need to move, and something is being put in through his nose. Even 2 days ago, it was the respirator was at the maximum force, and also the machine to oxidate the oxygen before putting it back in, and now it is down to 50%, and now Father's oxidation rate is at 97-98%, and so that meant that he was at that point he was receiving enough oxygen. From the moment that from the moment that people started offering Cheongsong, we were very encouraged. We saw that father's infection was going down, that the swelling was going down, and we saw that the oxygen machine, it was now it could be the respirator could be reduced to 40% of maximum, and he could still receive enough oxygen even at that level. Yesterday, the True family visited Father in the morning and again in the evening, but really very grateful that to heaven, to see the work of heaven, to see that Father has, we saw that Father is really being improved a lot by the prayers being offered. And when we visited him last evening, the respirator was reduced to 30%, and Father was able to receive enough oxygen even at that level. And now, this morning, Yeranim and others visited him with Mother, and the situation was the same this morning as last evening. And the Father continues to sleep. But there are still many machines attached to him, about 13 various machines of various kinds attached to him. And still, it's very serious. And if we see him improving a little bit, we feel hope. But a person who is of this age, the situation can change in a single moment. And a little bit of bacteria goes in, or if things can deteriorate very quickly. And so the next week, at least the next week, is extremely important. And that is the situation that Father is in now. Miyum, that is it is important for us to offer Cheongsong. We should offer Cheongsong, shouldn't we?